Hello and welcome to a special edition of the Jackcast, the Swansea City podcast. I'm Matt Brock and I'm joined as ever by Steve Carroll. Afternoon, Steve.
Afternoon.
Well, we could not do one, could we? We were due to do one tomorrow, but after the breaking news come last night and Monday night, we thought we needed to get one out as soon as. We will still follow up with our regular podcast tomorrow. We'll probably talk about this in far more depth, but we needed something out there now. Steve, breaking news last night, Micheal Duff sacked.
Yeah, I did think he was in trouble, I must admit, but I think as the time went on Monday, I was thinking, well, if he isn't going to get sacked at this point, then he's probably going to get Saturday. So then when the news came through just before 9 o'clock last night, I think it was a little bit of a surprise, really. No one's expecting news that late in the day, but the right decision, I think, from my point of view. I think it had gone far enough, really, hadn't it?
I think the big deal of what it was, clearly this is something that the club have deliberated over. As you say, they don't normally put out big sweeping statements like that at 9 o'clock at night. That would be a 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock at the latest release, wouldn't it? So I think that is something they've obviously deliberated on long and hard yesterday. But I think the timing of it, if I'm being honest, is quite good from the club, because there can be no complaints now, can there? There are fans of Duff and there are people who are very much against Micheal Duff, but wherever side of the fence you sit on, he's now had a good run of games as a Swansea manager. It could have gone after the Cardiff game. The comments were out of order. We discussed this at the time, that he didn't quite get what it meant to be a Swansea manager, and obviously that was coming at the tail end of a horrible run at the start of the season as well. And then you look at it and you think that, whilst some people would have really advocated for that, it would be really harsh and reflected badly on the board. As it is, he had that little pick-up in form and he's gone back to not really being able to get a great tune out of the players again. But he's had plenty of winnable games in there, which you simply haven't won. I can't really have any complaints about the timing of this.
Yeah, and I think it's not just the winnable games either, is it? Like, I know we haven't won a lot of those games, but it's been the performances, hasn't it? I'm sure we'll discuss the Huddersfield game in a bit more detail when we tomorrow night. Yeah. But again, it was a bad performance, and as much as we did dominate the game, it was a case of nobody ever really felt the goal was coming, and I was quite surprised when we got that equaliser at the end. But in that circumstance, we'd usually say, well, it's just a point game, didn't it? But it just felt like a crap point. That was the problem with it. That after what had previously come before, obviously the Hull game recently where we were 2 up and blew it, but if anything, we could have come away with nothing from that game as well. And obviously we've lost the lead, which is expected, really. But it's over that long period of time. And I think it was just the truth. He's the wrong man for the club. He's just not right. I'm not saying Micheal Duff is necessarily a bad manager. He could go elsewhere and do well. Previously, of course, he's at Cheltenham. He did very well. Barnsley, they lost in the last minute of extra time of a playoff final. So he's obviously done a good job there, and I think if he'd stayed there, he would have done a good job again. But he has found this jump to us too much. I think it hasn't worked, does it? And I think, like you say, some of those comments early on, they didn't really get us on side. Bad results, bad performances. Yes, that little run in the right in the middle, really, where we did have those 4 wins on the bounce, did hint at better times to come, maybe. But we slipped into another slump then. Since then, 1 win in 8. It's not good enough, is it? 5 wins from 19 overall, 2 wins in 10 at home. It's just been quite depressing, isn't it? I haven't enjoyed many games this season, and I wasn't inspired going down there Saturday, and it was another disappointing day. And I do think that we've made the right decision. And the encouraging thing for me was actually the statement that went out, is basically talking about how
they got it wrong, really, didn't they?
Yeah, they did, and they were talking about how it's important to have a presence in Swansea, and I think that's clearly meant that the manager wasn't spending enough time here, which, judging from what we've been told previously, is the case, and that's not good enough. They definitely need to rectify that, but also the Swansea identity was mentioned, wasn't it? And, that is important, and, I don't know if we're going to talk in detail right now about who we think could be next or who we want, but we need to go back to somebody that has a philosophy rather than Duff, who's come in here. I don't really know what he was trying to do. I think one of the big criticisms I'd label at him would be, I think we had this discussion the other day. Do you remember that Blackburn game on the opening day where Martin he'd only had a week in charge, hadn't he? So unsurprisingly, it was never going to be a brilliant performance, but I could see what we were trying to do. Now, there were a lot of mistakes. It was not brilliant, right?
I think Stephen Bender spent the game right wing, but it was crazy, wasn't it? But
it was crazy. I mean, we nearly conceded in the first minute from a farcical own goal, didn't we? But you could see what we were trying to do. That's the point I'm making here.
Yeah.
And that was after one game, and you're thinking, well, if we see what we're trying to do here, give it a little bit of time, we'll see an improvement. And we did, didn't we? I know then there were other areas where we didn't improve, and I'm not going to sit here and talk about Martin as some sort of god either. But with this guy, I still don't know what he was trying to do. Genuinely don't know. And when you're closing in on almost half the games gone of the season, I can't believe that we don't know what he's trying to do yet. So it just seemed to me that it wasn't improving. It wasn't going to improve. So in that case, we have made the right decision, and hopefully we will appoint someone who's far more of a Swansea man going forward.
I think it's a good barometer, isn't it, of where you're at. I mean, we're in December now. This is the point now, especially when you're coming up to Christmas with the fixtures coming thick and fast. You need to have a way of playing. You need to have doesn't necessarily need to be an identity in the sense of what the Swansea way is deemed to be. I personally think he might well yet become a successful championship manager, but it became quite clear some time ago that it wasn't going to work here. We do have quite a strict way of the fans will only buy into a certain method. We've discussed in the past that one of Steve Cooper's greatest saviours was that the majority of his time here was spent behind closed doors, because I don't think he'd have got the leeway that he perhaps got in some of the performances, albeit a successful manager here. But you look at the way that we played, and Swansea fans were still disenchanted with a lot of that style of play. So I think here it's quite we follow quite a strict code of how we expect to watch Swansea play, and it's based on the last 15 years. So when you consider that, there are clubs, we discussed before we started recording, you Birmingham who don't appear to be as I know they've got the new ownership now, so that might rule them out of that sort of club, because they've just, they appointed Rooney for a grandstand name, so I don't think Duff necessarily fits that bill. But certainly Rotherham have just lost their manager, and Nathan Jones ruled him out of there. That to me seems like a really possible fit, Micheal Duff to Rotherham. But here, where fans aren't happy to see just results, they do demand to see a little bit more than that. And as you say, we're looking at 20 games into 21 games in total, 19 in the league, and people's biggest criticism since day one is not really understanding what we're trying to do. And you've got to give the man time to implement his ideas, and I think that's the thing now. If you haven't done it by now, there's real concerns that you're just not going to be able to get your message across, and the players just simply aren't buying into it.
That's the exact issue, really. I mean, we made signings in the summer based on playing five at the back, didn't we? And I think we panic changed, really, I would say, because we'd started badly and the manager was under pressure for his job. Obviously, there's been so we have struggled out wide. We have brought a player in. I'm sure we'll discuss that another time.
Yeah.
So that will help, I think, judging from what I saw on Saturday. But I think that's the issue. What are we trying to do? I mean, we do have a reasonable amount of the ball in general. We had a lot more of it than normal on Saturday, obviously, because the opposition had no intention. But I mean, I don't really know what we're trying to do. I've seen far too many aimless long balls this season, for example. That's not what we do. I mean, I don't mind doing that if we're hanging on at the end for a result and you're just thinking, right, you've got to try and clear your lines a bit. But I mean, I don't like the fact that you might have the ball in your own half or anything like that, and you're just thinking, right, I'm just going to take a punt long. I mean, that's lower league stuff. We don't do that down here. That's never going to win you over. And to be honest with you, like, even if it works, which it didn't, it's still not going to be popular. I mean, as you were saying, really, I mean, down here, it's always been a bit like that. I'd even say going far back as before the Martinez era. I remember the John Hollins team was long ball, and people didn't particularly like that. And that was the side that won the league title in League Two, for example. So, I think down here we do like to see nice football. It's just the way that it is, and it's not going to change now, is it? Because the fact is, our best spells have been not just with results and performances. We have played nice football to go with it. So, that is an expectation down here now. And if you don't abide by it, you go in to get criticised, and in this case, the manager has lost his job because not only has he not provided performances, he hasn't had the results either.
Well, you've got to have that.
Exactly. It's a lethal combination then, isn't it? As you said, Steve Cooper, the football wasn't very easy on the eye, but he did get results, and if he'd gone up, then that would have been it, wouldn't it? But we didn't. But yeah, it would have been interesting to have seen what the atmosphere would have been like in the crowd if there was one during that time, because it wasn't great to watch. But Duff will have learned a harsh lesson down here, but I'm sure he will bounce back.
What will he take from this? Because it's quite. I know you mentioned the aimless long balls, and that's one of the things that people said, I don't know what this is, but he weren't even a long ball team. The stats don't play out. We weren't a long ball team, that's just fact. But way we looked at it, it was like we weren't really either or. We weren't enough of a footballing team to take that swagger into a game and say, do you know what, we're going to do the triangles, we're going to play it short and quick, we're going to try and move around you, we're going to have 600-700 passes a game and really try and dominate the ball and make you chase shadows so that when you win it, you've been starved of it. And this is what was big in Russell Martin's time. And look, I'm not rewriting history. I've sat on this podcast for a lot of Russell Martin's reign and said this will never get a success because of all the faults that came with it. But that was, as you said earlier, an identity. Whether we had, clearly, for all its faults, we had a way of playing, but we were neither or here with Duff.
Like you said, Steve Cooper was the same. We'd have to say, really, it was, sit quite deep, use the likes of Connor Roberts. There's the fact that he had a ridiculous engine to get up and down a lot. And then, particularly after that Christmas, you have someone like Hurahan, and that gives you the set-piece opportunity. And then you're relying on maybe a bit of magic from someone like Ayew to get you a goal.
And that was tactically, just to focus on that for 10 seconds, when we were going forward or we had a set-piece, Connor Roberts and Bidwell were effectively two more strikers, because the amount of times those two chipped in on the back post from each other's balls even. Then you go Low and Ayew, and then you had those two, and of course you talk about the set-piece. There was clearly a way, I thought, this is how we can beat teams, because we can overload them in these situations. We weren't really doing this.
That's the thing. It was a plan I didn't like, but it was a clear plan.
Yeah.
You knew what we were doing. Like with this, what were we doing? Like you say, we were almost caught between, different ways, really, weren't we? It just felt as if, it was never going to work because of that. I mean, you can't get this far, and, like I said, Martin, after one game, you had an idea pretty much of how you wanted to play things out. But I don't know how we can get this far and not have that idea, really. So I think that probably says it all.
It does feel like... so going back to the question earlier, Duff in itself now, he's going to go and lick his wounds back in Cheltenham, no doubt, before he dusts himself down and looks for another job. But how does he come out of this? And because I'm not really sure he can say that he didn't have the time, he didn't have the players, he wasn't back, because... none of these things are true. And we talked about the panic change in formation. It might have been the only good thing that happened, because I don't want to go back to a back 3/back 5 manager. I think the back 4 worked right at the tail end of Russell Martin's reign. We said, oh my God, the penny's finally dropped. And then he left in the summer, which was typical. When we had the back 4 earlier in the season, we went on that good run of form with Harry Darling and Bashir Humphreys in there. You thought, we look solid, we look like harder, we were defending stronger. We talked about that Sunderland game where we started poorly and stuff and they were overrunning us, and then all of a sudden when it came to backs to the wall, we were giants at the back and they couldn't find an answer. So decisions he made were really puzzling, because the dropping of Harry Darling, the dropping of Charlie Patino, and these are two of our better players this season. It feels like you never really did enough to kind of warrant the decisions he was making, because the results weren't backing them up.
Yeah, that's the thing. There were some strange decisions like that, really, weren't there? And it's hard to put your finger on. I mean, for the fact that I would say for most managers, I mean, nearly everybody gets sacked at some point. So it's happened to him now. He's probably done quite well to get 5 odd years into a career and not be fired.
Yeah.
So obviously he's now has been. The fact is, sometimes you've got to take some time out and maybe go and learn things. I mean, he'll have his connections in football. Sean Dyche should be one at Everton. Maybe he'll go up there and spend some time there and all this type of thing. I think sometimes you've got to regroup and look at maybe some of the mistakes you made. One of them would have to be the fact that he wasn't here often enough. You've got to, it can't be a coincidence for me that at Cheltenham he surely must have been there every day. If he wasn't, I'd be absolutely shell-shocked. If you're living there and not going every day, it's like, what the hell's going on?
It's not a part-time job, and especially at this level. I mean, you're playing against some of the country's heavyweights who dropped out. You're talking about the Leeds and the Southamptons and stuff, and the clubs that are aspiring at Leicester's. They're going to be the Premier League teams in not too distant future, and then you have to deal with the turnaround of those teams that come down again. This is one that you don't just put 4 days a week into it. You need to try and find an 8th day of the week because it's that high maintenance, the job.
Yeah, that's the thing with football management. The fact is, you've got to live and breathe it. I know there's Guardiola, for example. I think his wife and his kids have moved back to Spain, haven't they? And he's living in Manchester on his own, and that's what, he's probably very difficult for him. But he's got to make that. If they wanted to go back and he's accepted it, he knows he can't be there. He knows he's got to be in Manchester all the time. And that's the way that it is. The fact is, it's an all-consuming job. If you're not willing to put the hours in, it will bite you on the backside. And I think that's partly what's happened here.
Yeah, and I think there are a few characters at Swansea City as well. People who've seen it and done it, and especially the recent manager we've had who very much bought into it. Is the antithesis of Russell Martin, but not in the sense necessarily of the footballing style, but the character. He never really felt like he bought into Swansea as a city either, did he? You never got that warmth from him. No. He was different. It was a lot more like, Harden, this is a job, I know that if I lose X amount of games I'm going to get sacked. You know that if I win X amount of games I'm going to get poached. But he never really tried to buy into that fairy tale, which all the successful managers have.
He was quite cold, wasn't he?
Quite cold. Yeah, I think that's a fair.
He didn't. I don't think he had much affection for us. Maybe he's like that with Barnsley as well. We don't know it. I would think that with Cheltenham he probably does have something because he played there for years and then obviously he's managed there for a period of time and he lives there. But yeah, it did feel as if he was coming here just thinking, oh well, this is a job for me, and that's about it really. There was nothing else from I like being here, and I can't imagine even Duff going to that training ground, which we know is state of the art. I mean, let's not beat around the bush. I can't even imagine he'd be around there and thinking, oh, this is amazing. What an opportunity. We've got great facilities to help us achieve the goals that we're looking for. I think he's probably the type to go, so what, facilities are great, but hard work is more important.
Well, he's almost said that word for word,
yes,
isn't he?
So, don't get me wrong, there is, of course, if you're not, but when you're saying hard work is important,
you've got to lead by example.
You can't be in Cheltenham in midweek. So, you have to lead by example, as you said, and I think that's something that he needs to accept. I mean, if you want a job in football management, you have to be prepared to relocate. You will spend less time with your family. I mean, you've heard it from some of the legends of the game. Bobby Robson, I think, on his documentary. It's a great documentary. I think he talks about there's ever any times where he doesn't like himself. He said, well, I should be at home more. I should be spending more time with my wife and kids.
Yeah.
But he also knows that is the sacrifice of the job.
Yeah.
And it is a hard sacrifice. But the fact is, why was Bobby Robson managing for as long as he was? Because he was willing to make it. Now, probably the ones that are looking to cut corners and stuff like that.
Yeah.
They're the ones that maybe are not going to last as long. So, but look, Duff has been successful at.
And I don't think his stock will have fallen that much.
He'll get a job in League One.
Yeah,
surely, because look, he's been successful. So, and that's the way he has to look at it. I think he's by no means finished. I mean, if you're a first-time manager or something like that, and you take a job and it goes really badly, I mean, you're going to be in trouble, aren't you? But he has got some work to look back on, and if he's interviewed for something else, he can say, look, I've done this. Maybe I made a few mistakes here, and this is what I can learn from. And there's nothing wrong with that. I still think Micheal Duff can have a reasonably successful managerial career, but I do think he might be a lower league manager. But is there anything wrong with that? Absolutely not.
No, and I mean, when I look at the way he works as well, he has got that ready-made. He made no secret of the fact from day one, really, that he didn't agree with a lot of Russell Martin's styles and philosophies, and I think that didn't necessarily endear himself.
Well, it's just very strange, isn't it? Because, I mean, usually what you tend to see...
Look after each other in football circles.
But also, what you tend to see in management is... Right, let's say you take over a job, like somebody is going to take over this job now, right?
Mm-hmm.
A struggling team, that's down the bottom, and that's why you've made a change, isn't it? Now, the easy win for a new manager is always like, oh, we've got to get the fitness levels up. I hate that, because it's what they say all the time. But, and you're also going to say, look, we're not good at this or that, and the league table proves it. Now, under the previous manager, we finished 10th. And also, we've got 14 new players. I don't know how the previous manager is particularly relevant. If anything, you should be thinking, I've actually walked into a half-decent job here because I've got decent backing. The team finished in the top half. The manager got poached. It's not like I've come into a job where someone's been sacked because they've been doing badly.
No.
But for some reason, he seemed to have a major chip on his shoulder about the previous manager all the time. And I'm thinking, he shouldn't be thinking about it.
Yeah, and it was things like that, wasn't it? It was a bit cold and it was a bit snidey. And from the start, you were kind of feeling like, whether this works or not is open to interpretation. We're going to see. The proof will be in the pudding here. There was parts of Micheal Duff which I was actually looking forward to seeing on his CV. We were talking about high press, high intensity. He called it high octane himself. I was looking forward to seeing that. One of my biggest bugbears of Russell Martin is how we take 45 passes to get into the final third, and the opposition would cut us open with 3 and have a one-on-one. And I'm like, by the time we got to their final third, they got 11 men behind the ball. Our job has become a lot harder. Thank God we had Joel Perreault, who was able to shoot and score and find the bottom corner from almost any angle, because that was a heavy reliance on him under Russell Martin. And both player and manager will acknowledge that. There are parts to it where you go, yes, if he had a stronger team, if he was backed in January, etc., we could have seen how that played out. But I was looking forward to seeing what I believed we would see and what we were told we would see. And Micheal Duff, we just never saw it.
No, I don't think we did. And I think that has to be his biggest regret, is that he couldn't implement his own style onto us and show us what he can really do. And, that's something he has to do in his next job.
Absolutely. For Swansea City, we move on. We move forward. Early names being touted about, Steve. It's going to be one of those ones where the bookies are guessing. Please don't pay too much attention to the bookmakers' odds. But there are a couple of names that in the circles of Swansea City talk and whispers in the corners and stuff like that.
Whispers in corridors?
Oh, there's been whispers in corridors. Swansea City never has not had whispers in corridors, but particularly this season. There's been a few names that have kind of circled around and from several different sources. When you look at people that have been here before, under 18 manager previously, Eric Ramsey. He's now at Man United. He was at Wales for a while as well. There's one name that's been mentioned around. Young, highly rated coach. Can you see anything in that one potentially?
I don't know. I mean, it's hard to say at this stage, isn't it, really? I mean, I think the picture will become clearer. I mean, like I said, we're going to have maybe a better discussion tomorrow, and we're hoping to have a guest on. So I won't say who it is yet, but I think he might have an idea.
It's Micheal Duff, by the way.
I can assure you, I'd be amazed if he would ever speak to either of us. If he's ever listened to this, my God, he'll hate us. But look, I think from my point of view, I'd like us to go down the route of someone that wants to play similar to the Swansea way, if not the exact same thing.
Would you take a risk
on an up and coming manager? Yeah, I think that's what we should have done in the summer. That's the way.
Now we're 4 points off the bottom 3 of the season.
And it would be.
I'm not leading this question either way. There's a very valid point for either way of going this. But the problem I've got is if we go for another what we consider to be a safe pair of hands, we end up in another Micheal Duff scenario. No one's going to benefit there.
Well, from my point of view, when we have gone against the Swansea way, that is when things have unravelled. It unravelled in the Premier League, didn't it? I mean, Steve Cooper might be the exception here, but I think we were still on parachute payments at that point. Martin, yes, we weren't brilliant at times, but overall you'd have to say it was decent, I would say. And I certainly think that if he'd been backed in the way that this guy had been backed, he would have had us in the top 6 last season, without a doubt. So when we've gone against it, things have gone wrong. So let's learn our lessons. Let's go for somebody with that philosophy. A first-time manager's fine by me, as long as they've got the credentials. The fact is, right, when you hire a first-time manager, they will work their bollocks off. I'm telling you, because they know if they get sacked, they're done.
They're not going to go another job, are they?
Exactly. They might get another job as a coach, but they're not going to get another number 1 job. Those type of guys will always put the work in, I would say. And they have to. They know they have to. And let's just do our research. We've got for me, this is still an attractive job. We've got to remember, there's only 92 jobs at the end of the day. And this one is in the top 2 divisions. So how many of them actually come up? I think this is still a good job for somebody. It's a challenge, but I think we should go down the left field route. I mean, from my point of view, I'm sure you'll agree, we most certainly don't want Nathan Jones, do we?
Well, there's one.
That's you know, I Nathan Jones, to be fair, right? I hate him. I'm sure you do, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people listening to this do. Not necessarily a bad manager. You have to say he's done well in other places. It is not going to work here. It would be one of the biggest disasters ever if he got this job.
It's fair to say, people were unconvinced by Duff, but from the first day he walked into the door and his comments when he was having a bit snide attack at Russell Martin, and people were like, oh, I don't like that. We don't do that. We like managers who hug people and just kind of like, and say everything is rosy and lovely, and that's what those successful managers, the warm ones, are the ones that have done well here. Nathan Jones would get even less of a leeway, or far less of a leeway, because he's a scummer. He's a Cardiff fan through and through.
You see some appointments in football and you genuinely can't believe. Like, do you remember when Spurs appointed George Graham, and I was just thinking, I cannot believe that you think that this guy who's played for Arsenal for 10 years and then managed them for 10, like, this is ever going to go down well. I mean, and I couldn't believe that he even took the job, if you know what I mean. I'd be thinking, what was telling was that David O'Leary, who was his assistant at Leeds, did not go with him. And then went and stayed at Leeds and became their manager. You know what I mean? That for me said it all. Just like he realised you can't do this. Like it's just ridiculous.
You're going to have the fans on side, because it's not always going to be wins. And let me check a couple of names at you before we wrap this up. Chris Davis, he's at Spurs now. I believe his name was floated around in the summer.
That's the type I'm talking about, really. If he wants to be a number one, I think that he's gained a lot of coaching experience. Then. Yeah, I'm not going to be against that at all. I think we always have to say with these things, I never go in to nail it down and say this is definitely the person when I'm saying left field. But what you can say is...
There's a philosophy there.
Yeah, there's a philosophy there. It's a calculated gamble. It's one I'd be willing to take.
I'm not going to check all the names at you because we'd be here all day, but another one was your under Russell Martin, left after a short spell, Luke Williams.
I think Luke Williams has got something about him, but I mean, if you look at the goals Notts County conceded the other day, I think he needs to still hone his craft a bit. I think he should stay where he is. He's doing a good job. But, you know, I think if they were discussing him, I wouldn't be gutted. But I do think it may have come a bit too soon for someone like that. He should stay where he is. And then maybe a bit further down the line, an opportunity like this might come up and he could be good for it.
Two more names and we'll wrap this up. John Eustace has been in the running before, was offered the job before. And but he isn't as left field or first time.
Doesn't excite me.
No.
Like, do you remember that? Obviously, you definitely do. The infamous game last year where Birmingham beat us 4-3. Yeah, it was daylight robbery, wasn't it? Like we played really well in that game. We just defensively were speechlessly bad. But
I
thought they were poor. So I didn't see anything in them to think they're that great.
Which is, you can have off days, but they seem to.
I think they'd lost 5 in a row before that, though. And you're thinking, no, John Eustace, not for me.
Yeah, last one. The man who's got current caretaker job of the Swans, Alan Sheehan. What are the chances you think that he can pick up a few results and they leave the job with him for now?
Well, I suppose you never know, don't you? I mean, if we don't appoint someone by Saturday, then obviously there is a midweek game next week as well. So
could have two, couldn't he?
Yeah, it's a possibility, but look, I don't think they will.
I think it's fairly well known as well at this point that they are actively talking to people. I don't think Sheehan at this point is in contention.
Yeah, that's the thing. As much he's caretaker, he's not an interim, is he? Like, if you think about it, like if you're an interim, you're thinking, well, this guy is going to be in. Yeah. That indicates you're not talking to anybody else at this stage, or if you are, it's for further down the line. So
you might get an interview when
he might. Yeah. I mean, and if he's in the job, then then I suppose they'll know all about him.
He knows the club.
He knows the club. Yeah. knows the players. Yeah. But look, I mean, I wouldn't go down that route personally, but I mean, we don't know a huge amount about him, do we? What I will say is, unlike his boss, he did relocate down here and he has been here every day as well.
But this seems to be the one who was leading a lot of the training sessions.
I mean, to something like Roy Keane, I mean, you shouldn't be getting credit for it. I mean, it's a bare minimum, isn't it?
He's doing his job.
He's doing the job.
I think we'll leave it there for now. There's probably none of the names that we mentioned so far, such as the way with the Swansea City managerial market. Fingers crossed. I mean, this is still kind of new territory for these owners, particularly the newest regime. Some of the guys who've only come in the summer have had to make this, been part of this decision, Steve.
Well, it'd be interesting to know, how many of them actually are involved in this sale, and what was the sway, because that could well be it. It could be the two of them maybe have wanted him out for a little while. And now what happened Saturday is maybe swayed one or two others, and then they've got enough. Right now we've got the percentage wise, we've got enough to say right, he's going. But you don't know, do you? That's the truth. I mean, they tend to keep their cards close to their chest, or should I say, they might say someone's in charge, but you don't really know who is.
I don't really want to go down the route of using someone's statistical problem, external consultancy firm where they come in and they recommend blah blah. I think this is something that we need to acknowledge, that what we've done there is taken someone that on paper, Micheal Duff on paper, could have been a really good fit, but it just never transpired that way. So when you look at where we're going to go now, there are plenty of people at this club who we can reference and go, what is this? There are still people here who know what Swansea way is.
And I found out last week, someone behind the scenes quite high up has listened to this podcast, so if they want to listen and take our advice, that's fine by me. But yes, I mean, look, who honestly knows what we're going to do? But I was encouraged by that statement from Andy Coleman. So, look,
it seems like he said himself, judge me by what I do, not by what I say.
Yes,
but at this time, you can say what he has said does allude to the fact that he kind of gets it, but he knows what it means.
Yes, it does, but he's got to back that up now with an appointment.
He can't turn on and give Nathan Jones the job now after saying
he's got to back it up with what we're looking for now, and we'll see, won't we? And when he does, we'll pass an opinion as we always do.
As we always do. We will be back tomorrow for a fuller analysis of everything that's gone on.
But it might be Thursday for everyone that's listening. It might take a while to go up.
It's Thursday probably the time we get to listen to it. We'll be recording it tomorrow. We'll have a guest on and it'll be a little bit longer than this, but could not do a podcast today, could we? So join us for that and let us know what you think. But from myself and Steve, we'll speak to you soon. Bye-bye.